Hello, everyone who's joined. Good to have you on the line today. We're going to get going in just a minute. We're going to allow people to get logged on and get their audio and everything working, and we'll be going live in just a minute here. I see some more folks joining, so it's good to see those numbers going up. So glad you're able to join us today. We're going to get going in just a moment here. So as you log in, would just love to hear who's on the line, where you're calling in from, just kind of see what crowd we have here today. So feel free to pop that in the chat as you log in. Good to see those numbers increasing, and we'll give it just another moment here for people who are coming over from their last meeting and getting logged in. Oh, I see a couple Q&As coming in that the chat is not open right now, so I'll ask our moderator if it's possible to open up that chat as well. So thank you for letting me know. I do see those Q&As coming in, so we'll see if we can get that chat opened up. All right, great. Well, Atal, we're about 2 minutes after. I'm going to give folks just a moment to get logged in, but we'll introduce you in just in a moment. But hope you're doing well today. Good to see you.
Thank you, Michael. Same here.
Excellent. All right. And so we'll see if we can get that chat open on the backside as well. But right now we do have the Q&A open. So if you do have any questions as we go through the webinar today, we will have that option as well. So. All right, we're about 3 minutes after. I see a good number of people on, so I think we're probably in a good place to get going, just to make sure that we have time to have the conversation that we're going to have today. Exciting topic. We've been talking, Atal, you and I have been talking a lot about this over the last several days. We're going to focus today's conversation on sales enablement really across the sales cycle. So, what does that evolution look like? How has that changed our potential in our sales enablement roles? How do we get embedded through that process? How are we connecting to those stakeholders, getting that buy-in, setting that expectation? I know it's a very active group, so I'm expecting we'll have some really good conversations, some really good questions come in. So without saying too much more, we'll get kicked off on this topic. I see the chat is now working as well. So just for the folks who had put in the Q&A that the chat was not working, you've now got access to that chat. So good to see a few folks logging in, and let us know where you're logging in from, because we love to see the audience we have, usually across the globe. A few other housekeeping tips I will note. Feel free to keep that conversation going in the chat. We love to hear your feedback. We do have a Q&A tab in the top right corner as well that you can access if you have any specific questions that you'd like us to direct to the presenter today, so we can put a little bit of a focus on those topics as well. So with that said, no further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, Atal Bansal. And we're happy to have you here today. And I'll turn it over to you and allow you to introduce yourself and share a little bit of your background and where you're coming from.
Sure. Thank you, Michael, for a great introduction. Yes, it is definitely an exciting topic, something very close to me personally. So once again, thank you, everyone, for joining this discussion. My name is Atal Bansal, and I'm the CEO of TigerLRM, a next generation sales enablement platform. I appreciate you joining the call and hope that I do add value to your sales enablement knowledge and processes. And to be upfront, so you don't throw eggs at me through the screen here, I want to put two disclaimers over here. One is this is a big audience. You all have different backgrounds, from different sales team sizes that you work with, 1 to 200 different sales members. Some companies that you work with may have more weightage on hunting compared to closing versus farming. So a lot of that is going to be said today would be kind of perceived differently. So I appreciate you looking at it with that angle and the pressure points that you use in your team. The second thing is that this presentation is not designed to tell you what you already know. It's designed to tell you what, or at least challenge you to think differently. So you may or may not agree with what is being said, and that's totally okay. My job is to just provoke a certain thought process, and how you perceive is definitely your call. So again, thank you for joining the call and your participation today. So just a very quick high-level understanding of what I have of sales enablement. To me, why do we exist as sales enablement? What are we here for? What is our aim? To me, it is to do any and everything to enable the sales team. We love our sales team. I love our sales team. We truly care for them, and we have to work together to get bottom line results for them. Having said that, this is the agenda for the call. With that broader approach, we do believe that sales enablement could play a bigger role into what it does today. It could play a bigger role in terms of the full life cycle of a sales journey, from the nibble to the close to the farming. That whole life cycle could be more, the sales enablement team could be a lot more, play a bigger role than what it does today. The second thing in the agenda you'll see is our approach to training, which is again embedded part of sales enablement. What we call as a blind spot in selling or in the sales processes. We'll go through that. And the fourth bullet point talks about how we can embed our sales enablement team into the CRMs. Not only how, but why we should embed the sales team in the CRM to identify gaps, again, keeping the main goal in mind, which is the bottom line to our company, to our sales organization. And then the fifth bullet point is about what we call as a new term that we're coining called sales intelligence or sales enablement intelligence, which is beyond, it's a parallel to what we say is business intelligence, which is a very well known term, which is business intelligence. So we are suggesting what we say is sales enablement intelligence, and how to get that and how to use that in what we do today. And of course, the last bullet point would be around the conversation with stakeholders that the sales enablement teams could have in their role and progression within the organization. So this is a quick poll question, I guess, for Michael.
So yeah, we want to start off and getting a little bit of feedback from you and just kind of hearing, as we get going into this conversation, where you're currently at. It's all mentioned a moment ago that a lot of us sales enablement has been evolving over the years. So we want to hear a little bit about where your team's at and where you're most focused, because we might have some different responses and kind of want to hear where the audience is coming from. So we'll give you a second to respond to that. Poll should pop up right on your screen, and we'll let some of those come in. So as those come in, we'll give you another couple seconds. So if anybody has not voted on that poll, so feel free to jump on. And then we'll ask our folks behind the scenes to reveal those results here, as most of those, it looks like, are coming in. So seeing, yeah, a little bit of a mix. We see a lot of people coming from that pre-sales activity. I didn't see the full pop up yet. It looks like there are still a few coming in, but as we share those results, Yeah, it looks like there's a bit of mix across the sales cycle, but also seeing, kind of a push toward some of the things that are in the pre-sales. A few folks saying in the real-time sales, and interesting. And I think we're seeing a little bit less in that post-sale life cycle, which wasn't a surprise to me, but I'll let you kind of comment on that as well. So you're the expert here. Does it surprise you? What's your reaction to this?
Not really, to be honest with you, and that is what we think is happening today when it comes to sales enablement. It usually is, and what I say in sales enablement, I don't know if you want to move to the next slide, but what we essentially see sorry, Michael.
Yeah, no worries. No, yeah, as you move forward, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So what we see is exactly what we see in the polls. However, a certain misconceptions that we feel that exist is what I call the sales enablement team is being outside of the day-to-day sales processes, in the sense that a lot of sales enablement platforms and coaching and processes are designed about around training, onboarding, and sales content management. Which is great, which obviously is not only for pre-sales, not only for a new hire, but also for existing, but it's kind of activities that are done around the day-to-day action that happens inside the arena, if you will. It's like we kind of prepare our kids to go to school, but are not in the classroom to see what they're learning or what they're doing actually in the game itself. So a lot of that exists today, where it's a little bit limited, and we're kind of challenging that, and we're saying, well, the sales enablement should be kind of more deeper embedded into the sales cycle itself. I mean, much more deeper than merely training or coaching or providing content from the sidelines. And that's kind of what we are talking about here, where what we are seeing is the sales team sort of like, preps up and prepares the sales enablement team preps up and prepares the sales team members, with different capacity, but they are really not seeing the day-to-day communications, for example, during prospecting or hunting, or the activities related to how it is being done or how the leads are flowing through, and which is where we feel that the sales enablement teams could go deeper into it. And there are many different roles that the sales enablement teams could play, and we'll go through that in this presentation. What we call as full life cycle, right? Cradle to close, or cradle to last, if you will, from a lead inception perspective. Again, there are different areas that we will go through in this presentation about it. But what I'm trying to say in walking into this conversation is to open up our minds beyond training, onboarding, and sales content management to much deeper areas that we could do. And there will be a certain sections in it in the conversation here, which would be almost like role definition between sales enablement to a sales manager to a CRM admin. And we do feel that there are areas that are actually not covered between the three that should be covered, that could help in better results for the companies. So that's kind of the play here. At the end of the day, like I said, when we started earlier, in its very simplistic form, it's any and everything that we need to do for our sales team. It's not just X or Y, it's any and everything, and that's what drives us. So before I do that, I want to just take a step back and talk about the evolution of training as such, right? And again, training, if you notice, is moving. It's migrating depending on the digital impulses we all get, right? We all get tons of SMS and phone messages and emails and social media messages. So as a human being, a salesperson is being bombarded with what I call as over information. They're getting too much information to absorb. The second thing is, when we go into a classic setting of a classroom where information is given to a person, the teacher kind of leaves it to the student to interpret that information, and also to execute or to implement that information. So we want to bring about what we call as coaching rather than teaching, if you will. And again, we have to recognize that we are dealing with adults here. who are professionals with, with tons of experience. They have preconceived habits. They don't know what they don't know. They think they know everything, or they may think that what they know is actually accurate. So coaching can be very tough. And what we suggest is experiential coaching, which is if you are walking hand in hand with the sales personnel and we are able to see what they're going through on every single moment, then your coaching is more contextual. You're able to relate to them better. So the whole idea of this conversation is to migrate from a LMS, learning management system based coaching to a more hands-on, data-driven and experience-driven coaching, which is to change the bottom line is the main aim is to change the bottom line of the company and increase closes or results from the sales team members. To me, I think again, like I said, to me, when I'm coaching my sales team, I look at myself more like a coach on a football field, that I want to see the athletes perform, see and make notes in terms of their habits, good or bad, and then do a behavioral change in them, to cause them to make different plays, and also to make sure that they internalize what is being told to them while they're being coached. So it's a more deeper concept than, like I said, an LMS-based video that they're supposed to go after.
And it's interesting, and I see kind of coming in one of the questions that was coming in on here at all as well. It was kind of like more of a comment. It was like, they're curious to hear, but your opinions about sometimes why we get kind of pushed back from getting in some of that real-time sales activity. I think we'll get to some of it, but I just kind of wanted to plant the seed that some thoughts are starting to come in about like why you think that is. But I think we're going to get there.
And then whoever wrote that is getting the point, is exactly where we're heading. That's exactly the point. Now, we'll get to the solution of it, both in terms of the pushback we get internally from the organization, which could be either one. It could be from the executives, it could be the sales organization, or it could be just our unintentional thought process that we are technically, not capable to do that or whatnot, right? Again, that's precisely where we are heading.
Absolutely. So good. Yeah, kind of a good segue. And we also have another poll question to hear a little bit. Earlier, we heard a little bit about, where you're most involved in that sales cycle. And we're curious to hear as well. How about when it comes to monitoring the sales funnel? What is your sales enablement group or the group that you represent? How involved are they in that process? So we'll give you a moment here to answer that question. We'll see some of those results come through. So we'll just pause while those come in. All right, seeing some results come in for that. We'll give you another about 10 seconds or forever hold your peace. But I'm seeing, I think, a lot come in, so that's great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. And then in just a moment, in about 5 seconds, we'll ask for that poll to be closed, and we'll see those results come up. All right, let's close out that poll and let's see where things landed. So it looks like, and I'll ask you again on this, are you surprised by this? We see a few people are actively monitoring and managing that sales funnel. A lot fall in that kind of somewhat involved group, or about 40% falling in that not involved in the sales funnel group, or the sales funnel monitoring as well. So your reactions based on, working in the industry, working with your clients, is this what you expected?
We do, actually, and that's kind of where we come from. If you look at it, around 85% are kind of semi-involved and not fully involved in the sales funnel. And keep in mind, sales funnel is just a macro. It's not even the micro that we would like to talk about. It just gives the bigger picture. And on that note, I want to just kind of keep going here into the next point, which is very, very intriguing. What we call is a blind spot in a sales organization. So the first thought that comes to mind is, well, this is not my job. The sales manager should be looking at the sales funnel, right? Or the CRM admin should be looking at the data. But if you really analyze, if you really look into the job profiles of them, there is that blind spot that somebody is not looking into the funnel, into the sales cycle itself. And I'll go in detail here as well. So let's just knock out in terms of the sales leadership and the sales managers. 99% of the sales managers have quota, right? They're driven by results. They're measured by data. They're measured by how much business did you bring. So their viewpoint into the sales funnel is, or into the sales team itself, is very different than someone else. And we'll get to that someone else. The sales managers usually approach a problem from the end point. Why did we not hit quota? And what should we have done to hit quota? They don't start from the starting point is what should we do? And then again, there's a meeting point in between. So my point is, as much as we think that the sales managers should be monitoring the day-to-day activities and coaching the day-to-day activities for the sales team members, they really don't, because they are more driven on the macros. They have to report to higher ups. They have to tell them, they have to talk about strategies and forecasting and pipelines. So they really are relatively oblivious. They're not looking at it. A lot of times they just keep circling salespeople because they expect a black box approach of getting results. So their viewpoint is a little bit different. Conversely, the second argument could be, well, my CRM admin should be looking at all the data, right? They should be looking at all the information that the salespeople are putting in and whatnot. But in reality, CRM admins are really techno-functional folks. They're really there for the CRM health and wellness, the data integrity of the CRM, making sure that they are building reports and providing reports, but they're more reactive. Somebody tells them to provide that information or fix something or do a troubleshooting, and they do so. What is missing in this picture is essentially someone who is really truly going to the detail level to the salesperson and coaching them, right? Again, you can have different parameters. You can have different levels of coaching depending on the salesperson, whether they're tenured, whether they're closer. You don't have to have the same standards for everybody. However, there is that level that is being missed. And let me just start taking some concrete examples to relate to this, right? So, for example, let's say your organization would be more successful if you contacted every single new lead in the first 3 days. I'm being brought out, take it every day. I would say it should be contacted within 8 hours, I would say. But let's say, just argument's sake, you had an organization policy which said they should be contacted within the first 3 days. Is that happening? Do you really think your CRM admin is doing that? Do you really think your sales manager is doing that? To be honest with you, I don't think so. I think, in my view, that is a blind spot. Nobody's really checking. I apologize. I have to take a quick water break.
No worries. No, I agree. And that's, kind of a good thought in thinking about, some of the leading versus lagging indicators, the proactive versus reactive we get if we're focused on the right areas versus identifying those gaps. Sometimes it's hard to think about, what are we not thinking about right now? That's sometimes the tough question. And I think that's kind of where you're heading with that. Exactly.
So same thing in terms of sales cadence, right? Do you have a sales cadence, which could be a best practice? Or you could have a best practice to say, hey, in this digitally crazy world, I want my sales team to contact my prospects every 3 times in 2 weeks, whatever, right? So these are some basic things that I feel that are very valuable, coachable, but of course you cannot coach something that you don't know about, right? So the whole concept here is to allow our sales enablement team to go deeper into the CRM platforms and the platforms that the sales team is using, and gathering data and getting that data. And that's the blind spot we're talking about resolving here. But again, I want to just make sure I kind of quickly cover this before I offend anybody about these words I'm using, like compliance and monitoring and whatnot. My sole aim is the bottom line to the team, right? The bottom line results for our sales team. I think my sales team member would be happier if they made more money by making more commission closes than a little coaching session I have with them. So So let's go into how do we fill that blind spot, right? So it is our opinion that the best way to fill the blind spot is actually have some action from the sales enablement team within the CRM. And again, this is right now very abstract because we're talking to a larger audience. But at the end of the day, it comes down to regardless of whatever CRM you're using, you should be part of it. You should be looking at analytics differently. You should be looking at data that helps your sales team member get better. Again, here are some examples on the screen. It could be in lead management. It could be in lead distribution. It could be in activity monitoring. It could be reporting. It could be in many other facets. But the bottom line is the sales enablement team should be part of the CRM platform to gather intelligence that will be used to coach your sales team. Because without that, you're just shooting in the dark. You're kind of sitting outside the playground, if you will.
Yeah, I think we had a question come in too, and I think it's actually a good point talking about that. It said, I like the idea of tracking behaviors, but our team's not big enough to track for the entire field. I won't ask for the show of hands, but I'm guessing everybody hears that and they go, oh yeah, us too, right? Our ratio of our sales enablement folks to how many people we have is maybe makes it tough for us. And they just ask, how do you recommend we tackle that when we feel our team isn't big enough to track our entire sales team?
Okay, so when I'm just assuming the word team being the sales enablement team is not big
That's
enough.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I usually recommend is, look, the top guys, they close deals. I'm not going to touch them. God bless them. Go out, close deals, no problem, right? So then you come to the B and C players, right? That's how I look at it. So what you do is you essentially use two parameters in cutting down that playground into multiple parts. One is based on performance. It could be based by tenure. So those are the usually two different criteria I would use to choose my best next candidate for coaching, right? And the way I suggest that is creating analytics in the CRM that actually tell you. To me, we create processes and tools within the CRM that alert me when a certain member is constantly struggling for something. Let's say there's a member who is constantly struggling to get the right product catalog or pricing catalog or something. So we actually tend to use those criterias. And what happens over time, you kind of convert your B and C players to A players because you're helping them in the right spot. You're really helping them with the spots that they struggle with rather than a broad stroke, data dump, mechanism. So I hope that answers the question that the person had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some good thoughts. It came in anonymous, but I think that's some good thoughts to that, just around focusing that attention. You can't boil the ocean, right? You can't expect to do everything at once. And there was actually a second question while you were mentioning that as well. And it was, how do you teach the managers how to coach? And that's a big question. So we might not be able to get to everything, but I think there's a lot you can unpack there, both with, kind of getting them the skills and empowerment, but also that buy-in too, so they want to as well. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, there are two different aspects. So again, we cannot look at sales cycle as one black box. I kind of look at two different, right? So coaching towards what, right? Coaching towards selling skills. Yes, the sales manager should do that. Coaching towards basic processes that you think they should follow. Sales enablement team should do that. So as far as sales management coaching is concerned, it's a separate topic. We can hopefully discuss that later on. But I think going back to sales enablement coaching, the way we recommend is what we call as setting up sales processes, which is the basic guideline. And you could start with literally one line. You could, because it's a living catalog of documents, you just are adding to it. So what is happening here is what we say is a sales playbook, right? What we suggest is setting up a sales playbook. Now, I've heard these things where people just start throwing documents into Google Cloud and expect their salesperson to just go through these documents, especially the new salespeople. It's too much for them to get it. So I think, in my opinion, sales playbooks should be authored and monitored and created by our sales enablement team. They should manage a structured compilation of data, which is these best practices, which I call as processes. And best practices are what your top people are doing. How are they doing? Just start writing them down into a playbook. What works for them? What doesn't work for them? And that's the genesis. That's the start of creating a sales process or a sales playbook. Now, what happens is once you have a sales playbook, your A players that you hired from the get-go, they love it. Why? Because even they want to know what is expected from them. You just told them, hey, you're hired. Here's your playbook. Go. A good salesperson would just, thank you very much. I'm glad I know what what is expected of me. They'll be doing great. The other ones that need coaching, you essentially are creating guardrails for them, right? And kind of guiding them to a certain direction. And that's why the first step in this program, in our opinion, should be what we call as creating a sales playbook. In my opinion, the sales playbook should be embedded within the CRM. And that's simply because that's where our salesperson lives. It should be on their fingertips. And I think that also could be used and kind of meshed a little bit between the CRM and the playbook, where you can create triggers for yourself, for your intelligence, for your data intelligence, to actually get patterns against a person or a team or a certain a process itself, whether people follow it or not. But that's the starting point, is to create these sales processes, which could be very basic, minimal expectation that you want. It's not selling abilities, it's just the basic that you expect from your sales team, right? Now, the next thing is once you have that, you essentially start kind of creating measures and processes around this. So I'll quickly jump to this previous slide here. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. So once you build a sales process, you essentially then have a benchmark for your own sales team for your own sales enablement team to be able to then abide by, right? So your team members know, whatever their benchmarks are that they're not enforcing but coaching against, it would be the right word again, to help them meet those goals, right? And again, you could increase the octane level of each benchmark slowly over time. You could start with a basic benchmark, which is, like I said, every lead should be handled within X number of days. You could be going to a benchmark which could be more stringent, which could be more like, hey, you got to use this template, or you got to use there's so many touch points, for your cadence, or I'm expecting you to put notes into every single, discovery or closing meeting that you do, or a face-to-face meeting that you do. So you can start getting deeper, again, based on your sales organization's preference. But at the end of the day, you must have benchmarks, simply because it helps you both in terms of onboarding and hiring new people, and also getting data about existing people to make them better and better over time.
And there's some interesting interesting comments in the chat, as well as, does this fall with operations or is it enablement? And then even some comments where I've seen it both. Enablement has been a part of operations and vice versa. They're separate orgs. And I think you can always get into the what should it be and what do we see. But I think it's some interesting, some comments there in the chat that there needs to be that collaboration, but both play their kind of key role, no matter how the organization decides that it needs to be structured. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that. Yeah. I
agree 100% with every single comment. The problem, however, from a macro company perspective, is that's the blind spot. Whether it falls with operations or sales enablement, it's an internal conversation. In my personal view, it should be sales enablement, because, it's sales enablement. But it's an internal discussion. The highlight, however, is the recognition that there is a blind spot. Somebody is not looking at that area, at that component, and it should be.
So wherever the process is coming from is kind of maybe not the key point to take away. It's okay, what are we doing with that, and how are we making sure that there's we're enabling the people to be able to follow it, feel empowered to follow it, and be successful by doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to be done by who? Separate conversation.
Yeah, sure.
So that's kind of the first part of it. I don't know if you would like to take a small break here, get some more questions, Michael, or would you like me to continue?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I'm just checking the chat as well, and if anybody has any comments or feedback or thoughts on that, we're always curious to hear. I know it's not a shy group, so we're starting to see those comments come in. But I think a lot of it has been around. Sometimes the situations that were put in as well, where who has given us that responsibility, who gives us the kind of remit to be able to do that. Does ops create these processes and we reinforce, or is it and coach to it, or are we creating it? And in operations kind of helps with that. Is it collaborative? And that goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning of the call as we got going. It's always, we're probably all coming from a different place where there are certain organizations where maybe you've only got a couple people and they wear many, many hats, or others that are very robust and very kind of divided and collaborative, or even divided and not collaborative, and there are chasms to overcome as well. So I think that's kind of some of the vibe that I'm hearing from the chat and some of the questions and comments that has come in.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very diverse group. It's very broad, and the roles are different. So hopefully some of this rings bells in some areas. And I think when you
that
walk
outcome
away,
piece,
correct. And to be very honest with you, a lot of times when we walk away from these presentations, we get ideas, over time, and we realize, oh, okay, we could do it this way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're good to keep going on and keep the comments coming. We love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. And again, like we were talking earlier, it's all about gathering information to be able to coach someone. I always say this: you cannot solve a problem without knowing it, right? So what sales enablement intelligence is, it's about gathering information. Now, believe it or not, your CRM is gathering more intelligence, not merely for sales funnels, sales life cycles, but also for sales enablement. And there's a lot of information that you are getting from it. For example, your CRM is gathering data about activity levels, the volumes, by teams, by personnel. They're gathering data in terms of the content. Is it stale content that is being sent out or not? Is it active content that is being sent out? Are templates being used? What are the turnaround times of reaction times of your sales team members? So the intelligence is a lot. It's all in there. Unfortunately, we're not tapping that, because a CRM is merely being used for business intelligence and not sales enablement intelligence, right? And that's kind of where I feel that it helps the sales enablement team to get data. And again, we take pride in that, in actually creating that separately. And sometimes we even hide it from the sales managers so that they don't get offended, if you will. But that intelligence is really telling you acute, minor things. I have seen the best salespeople, like they almost have a cog like a pin that you remove from their sales process, and boom, they start closing. Because we found the acute problem that we're doing wrong, whatever that was. We were just overtly aggressive, overtly passive. And once we started removing those minor things in the sales team members, they started flourishing. And so what happens is that intelligence, that data is actually in your CRM. And like I said, that's what we call as sales intelligence. The other thing that happens when you have that kind of information and knowledge is your coaching is more relatable, right? Rather than having abstract statements like, you should close more or you should follow up more, you actually start talking contextual conversations, because you are able to say, hey, you know what, for that particular prospect, I saw you do this, and you know what, you used the wrong flyer or you gave the wrong pricing, whatever, right? So essentially, because it's more contextual, it gets you closer to your student, to your ability to coach them, because you are relating to them. You are more, you're going to the ground level and not just, giving a lecture on top on what it should be done. So to me, that makes a big impact because it allows us to get on the same page quicker. And the student also, so to speak, I'm using the word student for a sales team member, they also appreciate that. They also like it that we are doing it for their own betterment. We're not doing it to, beat them up or prying on them. They actually see the bigger picture, says, you know what, I'll close more, I'll make more commission. So the sales enablement intelligence is about leveraging data that is in the CRM. The other aspect of sales enablement that we feel that sales enablement could play a bigger role is what we say is saving the time for our sales team members. And again, the way I look at it is my sales guys are out and about, right? What can I do to make it more successful? What can I do to make them close more deals, help them make more money and make more commission? And so my job would be to think about things that I can help him. And one of the biggest things that I see is there are certain pockets that we have seen in organizational structures where they're spending time on things that I'm like, why is my sales guy even spending time on this? So for example, a lot of times if you're a hunting oriented sales organization and your sales team members are going out to get the contact information, email, phone numbers, LinkedIn, and they're spending hours and hours of their days to find information or org charts. To me, that can be offloaded to sales enablement. Why not? Right? If my sales team member can simply send an email to my sales enablement group and says, hey, I'm looking for the name of the CTO or CIO or VP of procurement in this organization, and here's the organization, and boom, 5 minutes later, my sales enablement team says, done. It's already in the CRM. The name is, James Smith, and you start populating that in the CRM and says, here's the link to the CRM with all the data on this account. Go at it. Now that's magical because you just saved a ton of time for a sales team member who would have otherwise spent time in both, data enrichment, gathering the information, or putting into the CRM. And those are areas that I feel that sales enablement could play a bigger role. Things like maintaining team calendars. Again, the more time you save for your sales team member from such tasks, the more time they spend for your company to closing more deals. And so we feel that by having sales enablement play a bigger role in taking over such tasks, it actually helps, and again, enables our sales team members a lot more than they would otherwise.
I think it kind of goes back to one of the comments we had come in right near the beginning about, how do we get that involvement throughout the real-time sales process as well, right? If we feel like we're getting blocked in any way, or that's not how our remit was kind of defined to us, it sounds like when we find these valuable areas, we're kind of naturally coming to that point. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, like salespeople will come to you if you can, unclog their whatever's stopping their pipeline from moving, and you start to see those successes. You won't be going out and seeking that. People will start coming to you, right? Oh yeah. I mean, great conversations, friendlier conversations, and they see it. They see value from it. I always say this, God only gave us one brain. I wish there were two. We have 2 eyes and 2 ears, but one brain. And unfortunately, if my one brain is not getting all the ideas, my second brain doesn't tell me, hey, you're doing something wrong. You need an outsider to come in and say, hey, you're doing something wrong. So that's kind of how we are. You need a sales enablement person come in and say to the salesperson, hey, you know what, what you did it wrong. You could do it this way. And that really, really changes the game for them. Yeah, and I did get one question coming through the Q&A. Is this type of approach more suited for an enablement team versus a one-person show? I'm currently the only sales enablement person, and that's kind of a lot to think. Said I can't imagine being able to do all of this, and so I'm curious to hear how maybe you prioritize that, right? Because sometimes I think the answer is you can't do everything, but are there areas you focus first? Well, again, I want to highlight the thing you said is that they are one sales enablement person. Sorry. Somebody just came on the screen here. They are one sales enablement person, but are they handling multiple sales folks? My answer to your point is actually, yes, you can. You got to start. You got to start somewhere, right? It's not an all or nothing ordeal, right? Even if you are one salesperson, and again, it's a journey. It's not really that, it's an endpoint in the sense that start with a playbook, right? Start with the CRM, like just go in phases. And
most of it sticks. Most of it sticks, meaning once you write the playbook, it's going to be there forever, right? People will see it, and then it's just break, fix, and maintenance. Same thing with the CRM. Once you have reports, you do it once, it's going to be there forever, right? Conversely, once you teach or coach your salesperson a certain way, that salesperson is good, golden, go. Let's go to the next person. So in my view, yes, you can. You just have to start somewhere, cut down your battlefield, so to speak, into smaller parts and start at the smaller, thing, and then, keep going at it. And over time, 3 to 6 months later, you'll be surprised what you have accomplished over time, because most of what is being said sticks. If the question was specifically about, what I gave you as an example for the sales, entering into the CRM, the data enrichment part, I don't want to come out here, but that's something that we offer as a service as well. So there are organizations, I'm sure, who do that, and find them, outsource them and give it to someone else. It's okay if you can't do it, just use a third party to use it.
And technology opportunities as well. Sure, if there's a lot of return on that, sure.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I saw one other question kind of come in the chat too, and it's a bit kind of outside of some of the things that you mentioned here, but it's around message delivery confidence for sales, if that falls with enablement or training. So I think maybe to just kind of distill that a little bit more, it's kind of for those face-to-face sellers and things like that. Is a part of this kind of looking at the pipeline, look at things that are going on. Is that something you'd see as something that enablement would do, or perhaps a separate training team to kind of help with that messaging, delivery, and confidence of the sales rep? And maybe you divide that into two: the messaging, and then people building confidence in doing that messaging.
Yeah, and we see that a lot, especially from new hires. And I think what we suggest doing is templatizing to a certain extent before making it free for all, right? So if somebody comes in and is new and they don't have that message delivery concept or confidence, either one, you could templatize them. You could have in your playbook, certain scenarios that you could play out, and you could templatize them. The other approach that we recommend you could use also is, again, pick your top salesperson, record their pitches or whatever they are through email or through their Zoom meetings and whatnot, and use them as a playback to your new hires and say, hey, look, this is what works. So it's more practical, more actual training than just saying something from a bookish perspective. Yes,
there are things that we could do in enablement to enable that, again, to use that word, and we might lean into the training team to execute on some of it as well, or to help with some of that one-on-one. But I think that can depend on the different organizations too, how they're set up and how they're built. Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. I mean, that's all. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, those, I think I hit all the questions coming in, but thank you for your kind of input and thoughts on that. That's all.
Sure. There's one question. There's one poll for you.
Sorry, I didn't realize I got stuck on mute there for a second. But yeah, our poll question number 3, how involved is your SE team in determining sales policies and direction? I think it comes back to some of that discussion that was happening earlier. So I'm really curious to see how this kind of falls across very involved, somewhat involved, or not involved. And after you put that in, maybe comment in chat as well. Let us know if you say, we're not involved. Why is it someone else who's doing it? It's like, I think someone's kind of reading your mind a little bit as well. There, it's all in the chat. This question made me laugh a little bit, because enablement should be involved in this, but we often don't get given that seat at the table. Ooh. So yeah, I know, right? It's
just read my mind.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I know. You're going there a bit in a minute. Yeah.
And that's exactly where we're coming from. Yeah. And
so I'll let if anybody has any final input on that poll question, put it in now, and in just about 3 seconds we'll close that out. In 3, 2, 1, we'll close that poll and see the results that we get. So most people falling in that somewhat. So I'll turn it over to you, Atal, and your thoughts on that.
No, I mean, my view is, as you can see, 80% are somewhat or not involved, to me, they should be very involved, right? And essentially, if you look at the data here, it really points to what you just said earlier about the next slide, which is you should have a seat on the table. Actually, literally that came in the chat. And the reason is very simple. I think the sales enablement role is much bigger. It's much broader. At the end of the day, you are there for the success of the organization. It's not about ego. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about, whatever, right? Who reports to who. It's about who brings the most value. Now, if you don't have the seat on the table and you go through your sales organization, obviously your data has to be a little bit restrictive, if not biased, because you're reporting to someone who you're kind of helping in the sense their sales team. So in our opinion, sales enablement should be reporting to a C-level executive. In our view, yes, you should be loosely tied to the sales department, but I would rather the sales enablement give unbiased and unfettered, honest opinion to the to the executives, because again, your target is to impact the bottom line of the company through sales enablement. And again, you have more intelligence in different ways. You have obviously personnel-driven intelligence. You have intelligence in terms of which salesperson does what and what not. But beyond that, you actually have a lot more intelligence in terms of where are the sales team members struggling the most and why. Now, this could be a struggle in terms of a policy that we have or the benchmark we have, or it could be that the company's product positioning is wrong because the prospects come back a different way. All of that day-to-day intelligence is going into the sales enablement team. So when you have that intelligence and you go into a boardroom or a C-level meeting, you're able to present certain information which is completely even the sales team members are unaware of it, because you're looking at it from an outside perspective. You're seeing things that, I've been coaching on this topic 15 times. They never get it because maybe it's too tough to sell. Maybe the sales process, the sales pitch is bad. Maybe the product pricing and positioning is wrong. And that is of immense value to an organization, especially C-level executives, because you're really telling them intelligent data. You're really telling them not just about the personnel, but you're also talking about strategy and direction for the companies to sell. So, and again, from this conversation, you have a lot more say in it. You have a lot more value to an organization than currently we're cornered into the training and coaching and sales content management aspect of it. So actually, to be very honest with you, that concludes the presentation from my side. And again, I thank you all for staying on the call, listening to all of what I had to say, and for your participation, your chats, your question and answers. As I stated in my disclaimers when we started, not everything would apply to you, but hopefully some of it would be, and you may not agree to all of it, but I hope some of it, and adopt some of it, and help in reforming or evolving our sales enablement industry to a bigger role than it has today, to a broader role throughout the sales lifecycle, as well. So happy to take on more questions, Michael, if you have for me, or anything that you would like to.
I'll open it up to the group. So please, if you have any final questions, let them come in. As people type those in, it's a bit of that chicken and the egg, right? I think once we show that value, when we're involved more in those areas and those gaps in the pipeline, people start saying, why haven't you done this before? Come on, do more, right? Because you start to prove that value, show that value very, very quickly. Right. And that it's interesting because it could even mean different things to different organizations where that biggest value is. I think there's going to be some core ones that overlap with nearly everybody, but it's just gotten me thinking, and that's my kind of takeaway from what you've shared today. So that was interesting. So any final questions that are coming in? I just see a few saying, thank you. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. But I think that's it. So we'll probably conclude here. With that, thank you, Atal, for sharing your thoughts on that. I know it's a kind of a challenging topic to think about. How does this apply to people coming from different places and different types of kind of team setups, whether it's the organization, how many people they have in their team, and how this kind of impacts them. So yeah, very, very much appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, and all I'll say is start
ahead,
somewhere. Don't be intimidated by it. Just start somewhere and just keep at it, and it'll continue to increase deeper. Yeah,
absolutely, right. It's get it going, and you'll start to see hopefully that snowball roll downhill and then grow larger.
Exactly.
Well, we thank everybody for joining as well. So we value all your comments coming in and keeping the chat going. So that's what I love about this group. It's always some good thoughts, some good opinions, some good experience. And that's why we're here to learn about that. So with that, we'll say good afternoon. Have a great rest of your afternoon or evening, or perhaps morning, wherever you're dialing in from. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.